Previously, we have discussed on how to determine the size of an array when you declare an array in a program. Specifically, we were talking about how to store data entry from the user into an array and specify the size of the array. We discussed three options. The first option is that if you know exactly how many input you are going to read from the user as a constant, then you use this number for the size. For example, 7 temperatures or 10 temperatures. Second option, you ask the user for the size, and accordingly you declare an array of this size. The third option, if you don't know what is the size of the input that the user is going to enter, then you declare an array with enough number of elements, and then you define a variable that keeps track of the used elements. So not all the elements in the array is occupied or used. In this case, we say that the array is partially filled. So we are talking now about partially filled arrays. The number of entries in an array versus the array's length. Now, when you declare an array, then the capacity of the array is in fact its length. So when you write a.length, then this is the maximum number of elements of the array, and it's called the capacity. This is the number of array elements that are created for you when you define the array. Now, you might not use all of these elements. In this case, how to keep a track on the number of elements that you are using in the array? So you need to keep a track of how many you have used. So you have to associate an integer variable that keeps a track whenever you add an element into the array, it is updated to reflect the number of elements used in the array. Let's go for an example. Here we are declaring an array of integers of 5 elements. So we said that the capacity of the array is 5. So maximum we can store 5 integers. And this is the situation in the memory. All the elements or all integers are initialized to 0. We define a variable that keeps a track on how many elements are used in the array. Since we did not add anything into the array, so the number of items of this variable is equal to 0. So whenever we look at this integer, its value represents how many elements are used in the array. So in the beginning, it is assumed 0 to represent the actual number of elements in the list. So we have the capacity, which is the length, and we have the actual number of elements, which is in the variable num items. Suppose we would like to add elements. And remember that you add from the beginning. So you add an index 0, then you add to index 1, then you add to index 2, and keep going. So you are basically adding from the end of the array. So we are first adding 100 into list 0. So we are adding one value to the array, and at the same time we are incrementing number of items to indicate that we have one item in the array. In the second element, we are adding 200. And again, you have to add number of items to reflect that we are adding 2 elements. So how the array will look like and number of items look like? The number of items will be 2 because we have added 2 elements, and we added the elements in index 0 and index 1. Since number of items is 2, that means we should care of the elements from 0 up to 1. Whatever we have after that, it doesn't matter. Maybe zeros, maybe other than zeros, because all what num items is telling us that we are using the 2 first elements in the array. Now, if I want to add a third element, then I should add it at index 2, because index 0 is taken, index 1 is taken, so the next available index is 2. So we added into list 2, let's say equal to 300, and we increment number of items by 1 and becomes a 3. So you need to take control of the elements that you are adding into the array by yourself. And maybe at the end, the list will be full. So when you keep adding, you have to make sure that you should not exceed the capacity of the array. Therefore, number of items should be less than or equal to the length of the array, which is the capacity. This will introduce us to the next example. We're going to show you how to create customized list. What do we mean by customized list? It means you write a class and you put the array inside the class. And then you put methods that controls the array. So whenever you want to add an element to the array, you don't add it by yourself. You just simply tell a method, I want you to add this element into the array. So the class itself will keep control of all activities or processing of the array. Let me show you this example.